Hi everyone, welcome to today's video. Today I have an inspiring story about the time I manifested running a marathon, and I just wanted to share this story for you because there was, a couple interesting events that happened to the fulfillment of that desired manifestation. But also, I really want to provide this kind of discussion on the importance of taking inspired action. And kind of the role that taking action plays when it comes to manifesting things. If you're new to the channel, my name is Shaheen Manjezi, and I talk about how to use the mind to manifest and live the life of your desires. If that interests you, subscribe to the channel and get notified for my new videos. So here actually is, if you guys can see it, this is my medal for the LA Marathon that I got. This was the 2019 LA Marathon that I participated in, and I'll start you guys from the beginning of kind of when this idea to run the marathon began. And it actually began when I was living in Auckland, New Zealand, for my study abroad experience. And I remember at that time I had met I think it was a couple international students who were planning or training for the Auckland Marathon. So these were international students that had come to New Zealand. They were only there for 5 to 6 months, and they had signed up for the Auckland Marathon, which was taking place at the end of the semester. So it was pretty cool because they basically just come into Auckland, studying for a semester, but they also had this goal of running the Auckland Marathon at the end of the semester, which I thought was pretty cool. So that kind of opened my mind up to this idea of running a marathon. And I remember looking up the Auckland running course, and it was just such a cool course that went through all the major parts of Auckland. And Auckland's such a cool city because it has like the biggest harbor in the world, or one of the biggest harbors in the world, and it's built on like 50 volcanoes. So there's just so many cool sights of Auckland, and I thought it was such a cool concept of running a marathon, of being able to run through a city with all the streets and everything shut down for you. That opened my mind up to this idea of running a marathon, and I was like, you know what, I think one day I want to do that too. So at that time I was writing a bucket list. This is while I was in New Zealand, of things I just wanted to do. And on that list I wrote down running a marathon. But I kind of do bucket lists differently, because after I write down a desired manifestation, I will perform an imaginal act that implies the fulfillment of that desired manifestation. So on one night, this was again still in New Zealand, I performed this meditation. It was a scene. And in this scene, I was crossing the finish line of a marathon with both my hands up in this kind of like warrior, like victory position. And the scene was me running across the finish line of a marathon. And also in that scene, I for some reason, I always had it in my mind, if I were to run a marathon, I would grow out my hair and my beard like that scene in Forrest Gump. I don't know why. I just always thought it was cool to just grow out your beard and hair and kind of just be like this Forrest Gump guy who just runs a lot. So that was another kind of scene in the manifestation that I wanted to manifest. So when I performed the manifestation, I imagined myself having like a big beard. Okay, so now fast forward. It's a huge fast forward. Fast forward one whole year, and I'm living here back in Los Angeles. Full disclosure, I did not run the Auckland Marathon, but I'm here. It's 1 year later after that whole sort of imaginal act that I performed, and I'm living in Los Angeles, and I'm in a parking lot in the Sam's Club parking lot, the parking lot of Sam's Club. And I get into my car, close the door, and the first thought that enters my mind is the LA Marathon. I don't know why, but that is the first thought that enters my awareness as I enter the vehicle. So the first thing I do while I'm in the car is I pull out my phone, I type in Los Angeles Marathon 2019, and the website pops up. I click on the website homepage, and on the top of the website homepage, the site reads, registration now open for the Los Angeles Marathon 2019, and the date I believe was March 23rd, 2019. Now this time of year, it was around the Christmas season, it was a holiday season, it was in December. It was in December. So I kind of did the math and I was like, well, realistically, I wouldn't start training if I were to do this marathon until after Christmas. So I was like, well, that would give me 3 months to train. And like, mind you guys, I know nothing at this point. I know nothing about running. I know nothing about training for a marathon. But right then and there, I make the decision that I'm doing this. I'm signing up and I'm going to do the marathon. Which was, it's just something inside me impelled me to just move forward and pursue this marathon, this Los Angeles 2019 marathon. I made it up in my mind. It's done. I'm doing it. But there was one major problem. And that problem was I absolutely hated running. I just don't like running, never did. And I'm one of those guys where it's like, okay, I'm active, I play sports, I love playing basketball and tennis and stuff like that. I love playing sports and stuff, and I'll run to play those sports. But just the idea of just running, for me personally, like, just boring to me. I know there's a lot of people that like running because it's like a sort of meditative sort of thing, but for me, I just never really liked running. So and here I was like performing imaginal acts of me running a marathon. And that's why another thing, that saying of be careful what you wish for, is so relevant when it comes to manifesting things and entering realities in your imagination, especially before you go to bed. If you're entering realities in your imagination before you go to bed, like, you're pretty much going to get it. So you got to be careful what you wish for. Okay, but nonetheless, this was still something that I wanted to do. So the first thing I did was I texted one of my best friends. His name's Kevin. And I knew that if I were to make it through this training, I'd have to recruit another person to train with, to run with, so it wouldn't be as boring. So I remember texting Kevin, and the first thing he responds to me is like, it was just a huge like hell no, and he was basically like, why would I pay $200 to run 26.2 miles? So he was just not on board when I proposed the idea over text. But I went to his house a few days after, and I guess my persuasive skills were really on point because I got him to sign up for the marathon. I think I gave him some spiel about how running a marathon develops you as a disciplined person, and it's not about running the marathon, it's about the person you become after running the marathon and all that. And yeah, basically he was on board after my little spiel, my little speech, and he was actually like excited to run the marathon after that. So it was cool. Now I had a training partner, and we kind of just ripped a training schedule offline from the internet, and kind of just customized it a little bit, and now we had a 3-month training schedule. And we began training for the LA Marathon. We signed up and we began training for the LA Marathon. And basically that 3 months of our lives, we were basically just living like monks, essentially, because neither of us were runners, okay? And but we only had one goal, really, which was to run a marathon. And pretty much my life changed, and my daily schedule looked like me waking up at 4 to 5 a.m., running 3.5 to 7 miles before breakfast, then going into work, coming home, having dinner, doing some intense stretching, and then going to bed super early. And that was it. That was basically the life. And then we would do a long run on the weekend, a 10-mile plus long run on the weekend. And there was no partying, there was no getting involved in any distractions. It was just like, we have this one goal, which is to run the marathon. And so yeah, that's what we did. And 2 months sort of progressed, and we're doing good. And I remember this was one day after a 10-mile run, and I felt great on the run, but I wake up one morning and I get out of bed and I place my feet on the floor, and then I try to stand up, but this zinging pain kind of just shoots up my right ankle, and I literally cannot stand or put any pressure on my right ankle. And this was like 2 months into the marathon training, which means I was only 1 month away from running the marathon. And I realized that my ankle is injured. And I start putting 2 and 2 together. I realized that this was the ankle that I had sprained very severely just a couple years back while I was playing tennis. So I realized that my ankle is completely injured, and I go into work and I'm like limping, and all my coworkers are like asking me like what happened and all these things, and they're like, and I tell them, well, I guess my ankle is just experiencing an overuse injury or something like that. And that's when all the doubters just started to express their doubts. And my coworkers are like, well, the marathon's only 1 month away. You're not going to be able to run it if you can't even walk right now. And my family, my parents, they're also expressing their worries and their concerns, and they're like, there's no way that you can run this marathon if you can't even walk. And basically my plan was, okay, I'm just going to stop training. I'm going to pause my training for a week, and I'm going to ice my ankle. I'm going to stretch, I'm going to get a lot of rest, and hopefully by the end of this week my ankle is okay so that I can continue my training. But essentially a week passed and my ankle didn't feel any better. And it was at this point in this whole marathon ordeal that I began to allow the doubts to start seeping into my mind. And I started thinking to myself, well, I can't even walk properly. How am I going to run 26.2 miles? And basically all those doubts that everyone else had been expressing started to seep into my mind. And this was after I had already manifested a study abroad experience, manifested a job. So there was this inner voice in me that started to arise and say, like, no, don't accept the self-doubt. And I just need to perform the imaginal act again. I need to get out of this state and mind frame of self-doubt. So that night, I go back in my imagination and I do the meditation over again of me with the beard, with the long hair, with the Forrest Gump look, running, crossing the finish line with my arms up. But this time in my mind, I'm saying something along the lines roughly of, even after all that, I did it. I finished it. I completed it. And I succeeded. And that's sort of the mantra I began saying over and over in my mind as I drifted off to sleep. Okay? The next morning rolls around. I wake up. I put both my feet on the ground. But this time, there's no pain. There's literally no pain. I get up, I stand up as I normally would. I start walking around and I realize that my ankle is completely healed. It's as if nothing had happened. In fact, my ankle felt stronger. And There's literally no more pain. I go into work walking normally, as I would normally. You know, people are asking me how my ankle feels, and I tell them it's healed. It feels fine. So I gave it a couple days, and then I go for my first, run back. And this had been after I was off for 2 weeks. And the marathon was only at this point, 3 or 4 weeks away. And I went for my first, 5K run, and I felt good. I felt strong. And from there, I just continued my training in a sort of modified fashion. But I made it up all the way to my 18.6 mile long run, which was the longest run in my training. And before I knew it, the marathon day showed up and arrived. I showed up to the marathon, me and Kevin, and I felt good. I felt confident. And I showed up knowing that I'm going to finish this run. I'm going to actually run a marathon. And that's what I did. I ran the marathon. I did actually do the exact scene that I imagined with me, with the hands up, with the Forrest Gump look, and I ran the marathon, and I made it to the end, and I crossed the finish line. And at the end of the finish line were my family, my parents, my dad, who was he was expressing for the entire time of the 3 months the most concern, and I believe it was because in his mind he thought that you had to train like years to be able to run a marathon, which is not true. It's totally not true. But that's kind of how he viewed it in his mind. So the entire time he was telling me, he's like, you really got to take more time to train for the marathon. You got to, he was expressing his concerns, his doubts, and he was a non-believer. He did not believe that I was going to run the marathon. So I think on that day when he saw me cross the finish line and have the medal over me, he was speechless. It was actually one of the funniest things ever. But yeah. That's essentially the story of how I manifested running a marathon, the little speed bump that that occurred in between. But the main reason I want to share this story with you is because there's no other manifestation that's really more telling of how important it is to take action than running a marathon, right? Like, if you want to run a marathon, you're going to have to run. You're going to have to take action. You're going to have to do something. And I think there's this notion, especially like in the law of attraction community, of people just getting something for nothing, thinking that they can just think about something and then they can just sit in their room all day and not do anything. And that's not how it works. When you perform an imaginal act, and fulfill a desire in your imagination, you will still have to take action. You're still going to take action, but you're taking action from this place of knowing that your desire is already yours. You've already fulfilled your desire within yourself. And you're taking action from this place of knowing that your desire is already yours. And the physical expression of that desire is inevitable. Okay? So that is what it means to take inspired action. And that was actually the mantra that I had for that entire 3 months. I would always tell Kevin, no matter what happens, I know inevitably I'm running a marathon and I'm finishing a marathon. That was always the mantra, especially when I got injured. And even when at times when he was expressing doubt and concern because we weren't running together anymore and I had to take a couple weeks off, I told him, no matter what happens, it's inevitable. I'm crossing a finish line. I'm running a marathon. And for me, I didn't know exactly if it meant that marathon or a marathon in the future, but it was because I knew, that I had performed the imaginal act. I had fulfilled the desire within myself. I knew that it was done, right? I knew that it was done. And the analogy I have for performing imaginal acts is like pushing a boulder up one side of the mountain, right? Or one side of a hillside. And that's the imaginal act portion of it. You know, it's you getting into the scene, and performing the imaginal act to the point where you fulfill that desire in your imagination. And when you get to that point, that's like reaching the top of the mountain with the boulder. And once you reach that point, then all you have to do is let the boulder go and it will roll down the other side of the mountain. And that's to say that when you achieve that state of being in your mind, of you having your desire fulfilled in your imagination, it's done, right? It's like the boulder going down the side of the hill, right? Especially when you do it before you're going to sleep, before you drift off into sleep. It's basically done. It's inevitable. It's coming. It's going to express itself in the physical world. It's already yours. So, just a story I want to share with you guys. Hope it inspires you in some way. Hope I give you some valuable insights in some way. If you enjoy the story, please give the video a like, share it with someone who could use it, and share any sort of inspiring success stories that you guys might have to inspire other people. Or if there's any other topics you want me to cover, please post them in the comment section below. But that's all I have for you guys today. Please have a blessed, happy, grateful week, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Until next time, imagine wisely.